Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
Hugo, thank you for the opportunity.
So let's just dive right in. Kevin, in Build Better AI, you write that building responsible artificial intelligence demands far more than aspirational mission statements. Tell us more about your piece.
Yeah, sure thing. So, what I really wanted to highlight with this piece is the fact that we hear from the major labs, whether it is Google or Meta or Anthropic or OpenAI, some version of the following. Let's build AI that harnesses the positive attributes of AI while mitigating the negative aspects of AI. And I think all of us can say, well, duh, that would be ideal if we can make sure that we are recognizing those pros and mitigating the cons. That sounds like a great approach. But in practice, we need to be far more specific about what are those actual positive use cases that we've identified and that we want to see become more ubiquitous across society. And what are those red lines? What are those concerning use cases that we want to identify and prevent from spreading across the rest of our communities? And that requires a hands on approach from the rest of us. Because if we just kind of sit back and say, oh, well, now that I know the AI CEOs want to do what's best and they want to navigate that narrow path toward finding the best and worst use cases of AI, what I worry is that some people may sit on the sidelines and just assume that things are going to work out. Or they may just be in a sort of reactive posture of, oh, I'm so excited about these pros, or I'm so against these cons that they don't see that there's an opportunity for them to help shape that narrow path forward.
And oftentimes that's the case, right? Some people might feel like there are barriers preventing them from engaging and helping shape a lot of what you've mentioned. So how do we move from broad ethical principles to enforceable standards that actually shape AI development in real time?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways that I would encourage people to get involved. First, use these tools. I will say that as someone who teaches AI and the law at the University of Texas, I use these tools on a regular basis. And I think that just about everyone at this point in the development of AI tools can find a positive, pro social use of AI that aligns with their interests, that aligns with their values, even if that's something as simple as translating a news article and sending it to your friend who doesn't speak that language, or identifying new information that can help you be a more thoughtful voter and think about issues from a different perspective. So there are tons of positive use cases that folks may not realize until they go and try these tools. So, number one, I would say play with these tools. Now, that doesn't mean you have to enter sensitive information or you have to disclose trade secrets or anything like that. Use a kind of low stakes, easy task to get a sense of what these tools are capable of. And then, secondly, I would say share when those use cases go right and share when those use cases go wrong and help popularize when are these tools actually something that align with our values and what we want to see from our community members? And when are they something that perhaps raises some concerns that we would like to call out and make sure aren't popularized? But that takes a participatory nature to this conversation and an approach that really requires more people than just those in San Francisco building the tools to actively understand what these tools are capable of and when they should be used. So, first, use the tools. Second, share when they're going right and share when they're going wrong. And third, engage with your local representatives. For better or for worse, just about everyone wants to be known as the AI guy or the AI gal in their state legislature. We've seen since the ChatGPT era commenced in late 2022 that more than 1,700 bills related to AI have been introduced across the state level. So if you have a good idea about what AI policy should look like, go call your state rep because they will be intrigued. They want to hear from you. Or go talk to your city council member about a positive use case you think the city should be leaning into. We are at such an early stage in this process that if you start to come up with ideas, you can really be on the vanguard of making sure that we do indeed harness the pros and cons of this technology.
Civic engagement is so important. Absolutely. And I think really great advice, right? It's about also demystifying AI and sharing, as you said, best practices, both best practices, but also lessons learned. Now, in April, you also wrote layoff headlines keep coming, policy answers don't. Here's one solution, where you explore how states and local organizations are developing near workforce training programs to help Americans adapt to rapid economic and technological shifts. Tell us about that piece.
Yeah, so here I really wanted to help inspire both state and federal lawmakers who are aware of the fact that we are experiencing an AI transition. When you go and you talk to economists, they'll tell you, hey, we think on the aggregate that there will be more jobs as a result of AI and other emerging technologies in the future. We don't know when those jobs will occur. We don't know what those jobs will look like, and we don't know where those jobs will be. And so we can basically all agree that there's some transition period where today's workforce is going to have to figure out how to become tomorrow's workforce. Now, during prior waves of technological innovation and other geopolitical trends, we've seen that that transition period has been really rocky. We've been caught flat footed and we've allowed entire communities to experience significant economic downturn because even though we could have anticipated this sort of transition, we weren't proactive enough and we weren't creative enough about legislating for possible futures. And so this piece was my attempt to assist with that effort, to provide one small part of what our economic transition plan could be. And so I call for these sort of transition launch pads. And really, what a transition launch pad would be immediately following that sort of layoff event or whatever separation event has caused someone to fall out of employment, they would have an opportunity in their local community to go meet other people who are in a similar position, go receive practical training based off of the demands of local employers, and then have opportunities to interview and network with those employers. And so it takes advantage of the fact that our responses to these sometimes national and even international economic trends ultimately must be contextualized at the local level. So if we can provide people with meaningful training and networking opportunities immediately after that layoff event, they're going to be far more likely to find their next job sooner.
And that's key, right? I think a lot of times when change happens to someone, it's very frightening. And I've certainly been part in my 35 plus year uh, journalism journey. I've seen how technology has transformed the workplace. But often, as you've mentioned, it's kind of muddy in regards to the training to help those impacted by the cuts that sometimes technology brings with them to be able to get to add to their tool chest a new skill set level in order to not so much have change lead them, but them lead change. Now, given your experience in the work that you lean in on AI, how effective are current retraining programs? And is there any evidence that exists that they actually lead to stable, well-paying jobs? Because sometimes for displaced workers, it does feel like lip service, that comes not just from the companies that are enacting these changes, but also from elected officials that are sometimes in lockstep with these companies in making those changes.
Yeah, Hugo, unfortunately, I think that lip service is the right word, where we have some very well-intentioned programs that have been around for a while. One is called the Workforce Innovation and Operations Act. The O may be different. We refer to it as WIOA. Uh, that has been under financial constraints and limited funding and limited coordination. And so, what we've seen from the federal level and the state level is oftentimes a kind of, well, we can throw money at it and let's just hope something happens. And that leads to a couple things. Number one, we have a high degree of fragmentation. So we've seen that there are different entities at different levels trying to prepare people for different jobs in different locations. And that leads to a lot of chaos. And it makes it really hard for workers to even know, hey, where do I go find the right reskilling or uptraining opportunity for me? We also see that there are oftentimes poor metrics that are being used to assess these different opportunities. So, one example of that, Hugo, would be that some of these organizations and efforts are measured by how quickly someone finds their next job. Now, in the abstract, that may sound great. Hey, we want to make sure that people are finding jobs as quickly as possible. But in practice, what that may mean is that this recently laid off individual, sure, they may find a new job instantly, but perhaps that's yet another job that has a high likelihood of exposure to AI or other emerging technologies and doesn't provide that sort of financial and economic security we know Americans need. And so we have to be much more thoughtful about what we're measuring and what we're trying to prepare workers for. And that requires coordination at the local level, sustained investment at the federal and state level, and then really diving into a clear metric system so that we know what are the systems that are actually working and what are the systems that are failing that need to be abandoned.
I really appreciate your multi-pronged approach in solving some of these hurdles that so many people face when it comes to being displaced by technology. You mentioned earlier in regarding best practices in people helping people, right? Some of it, I think you mentioned translating information. We know that in any situation, when it comes to change, all people are challenged, but there are different communities that are challenged than others. They have barriers, some of them language barriers, to really getting some of the training that will help them get from here to there. Regarding those barriers, based on the work that you do, and what are some of the communities that are being left behind by technology and this wave of change?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'll call attention to the people who are still experiencing the wrong end of the digital divide. We know that there are still many Americans in both urban and rural communities who don't have access to affordable high-speed broadband. And if you don't have access to high speed internet, it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to leverage the full benefits of AI, which often require low latency, high connectivity, and some pretty robust internet plans. So, first and foremost, we need to make sure that all Americans have access to high speed, affordable internet so that we don't see that digital divide transform into what I'm trying to call the AI abyss, right? Where we have these AI haves and AI have nots. Secondly, we need to make sure that older Americans in particular are receiving the support required to be familiarized with these AI tools in a way that aligns with their lifestyles and values. There was a recent poll by Quinnipiac that showed that a plurality of both boomers and members of the silent generation have not meaningfully engaged with AI tools. And yet, there are many AI use cases that can be transformative for these communities. I would also add that many AI tools have not been as well trained for individuals for whom English is a second language. So some of these tools, if you go prompt it in, uh, you know, Russian or Spanish, or you pick the language, they may not be as capable as they are when they are prompted in English. And so we can see some barriers based off of language as well. So here, this is one of those instances where number one, I would say use the tool. Number two, again, share when it goes well and share when it does not go well so that the builders of these tools know, hey, there is a demand for better tools in this regard that have this functionality or that functionality. And then third, what I really would love to see, and Hugo, I apologize for going down a bit of a historical rabbit hole for a second, but if we look back to the 1930s, when we were trying to make sure that everyone had access to electricity, the federal government created a program called the Rural Electrification Administration, or the REA. And the REA sponsored what was known as the Electrical Circus. What was the Electrical Circus? It was a sponsored effort by the federal government as well as by some private entities to go from community to community to community across the country and show people how to use electricity. Now, that may sound simple to all of us, right? But at the time, think about people who had only heard, hey, I heard that, there was this electrical fire in this community, or, perhaps somebody got electrocuted in some community, and they were scared of using this technology. Well, we're in a similar place today where we need trusted messengers. We need public libraries. We need local school teachers. We need faith and civic leaders to know about these tools so that folks in their community can look to them and say, hey, who is a trusted resource to make sure that I'm not, for example, being defrauded or scammed, but know how to use these tools in a responsible fashion.
That's a wonderful example. And I think often um, we're not reinventing the wheel. We have the playbook. We just need to apply AI to the playbook that we've used previously in a similar situation. And AI is that, right? It is not a luxury, it's a need. And we saw an example of that at the height of the pandemic. You mentioned the access to the digital divide, and we saw how when we had to stay at home, communities represented by age, socioeconomic background, race, ethnicity. Some of those communities, for example, getting education from home, they didn't have that connectivity. And many of these families needed to park outside libraries in order to get Wi-Fi. Telemedicine, seniors who already have, some of them have mobility issues, not having that connectivity literally put their health at risk. So you're absolutely right. We really need to look at a playbook that we've used time and time again and apply it to AI, apply it to the digital platform in order for many of these communities to be to catch up and to be in equal footing. Kevin Frazier, the Senior Fellow at the Abundance Institute, directing the AI Innovation and Law Program at the University of Texas School of Law, and of course, Fulcrum contributor. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights.
Thank you for having me, Hugo, and thank you for running a fantastic publication.
And thank you for joining us. Be sure to visit us at thefulcrum.us, where you can read Kevin's columns and other democracy and civic engagement articles. Amo Gubalta, hasta la próxima.